brilliant. At a leading national law firm. Tasha was always an active volunteer in a number of key organizations in Montreal, and 5 years ago, when she decided to pivot full-time to mission-driven work, she began at McGill University in a strategic role in university advancement. She's come to the depot after over 3 years at the Foundation of Greater Montreal, where she acted as Vice President of Community and Philanthropy. When she's not working, which I've got a feeling isn't that often, but she does love playing in the forest with her family and curling up with a novel. With that, I'll ask Tasha to come up and share your life with us, and take all the time you need, because God knows what made you wait.
Thank you, Joe.
What we'll do is you just say when you
Slide. All right. I might even not use my slideshow. Let's just see how it goes. So thank you for the introduction. I'm Tasha. I got to chat with some of you over lunch. Delicious. One of the things that I loved about coming to the depot was it was a whole group of people who were not only passionate about community, but also about food. A whole bunch of people who really care about food in the same way that I do. So that was a wonderful introduction for me. So maybe slide. I haven't used this presentation before. I just did it last week, so let's see how it goes. And we're working on our key messaging. I've been at the depot for about a year now, and as you can imagine, and as you've heard, and I know you all kind of watched the depot from different distances, it's an organization that has pivoted enormously over the past three and a half years. We used to accept food donations. I know you used to do food drives for us. And now we don't accept food donations anymore for all kinds of reasons that I can get into if you're interested in. But ultimately, that totally changed how we work. We also went from offering 20 different food programs to only delivering during COVID food to about close to 1,000 families every month. And then we pivoted again after 3 years, we pivoted again. There was Omicron, and then we opened all of our services again in March of last year, and have just seen the demand grow and grow and grow. So the team is constantly adapting and changing. But I think what's really important to know is at the heart of our work is not only this desire to meet immediate food needs, and I think it's a real understanding that food is a basic human right, and that the cause of food insecurity, thanks, Jordan. The cause of food insecurity is poverty, and it's social inequality, lack of distribution of wealth. So we're interested at the depot not only in meeting these immediate needs, but also really thinking through a social justice lens about what it would look like if everyone in our community had access to healthy food. Our programs are, you can switch slides. Our programs are arranged over 4 pillars: grow, cook, share, and mobilize. So I invite all of you to come visit our space. We can arrange a tour for you, or if you can come individually too, I'll give you a little tour. You could have lunch. We have an amazing meal program. It's free for anyone who comes in. One of the things that's really important to us is that we have a low barrier access. We know that the stigmatization around accessing emergency food is really high, and that many people who need emergency food services don't access them because of the stigma attached to them. And so in our space, when you come in, everyone's welcome. We're not asking too many questions, and you'll see that even though people are in there who are in crisis all the time, it feels like a restaurant. It feels like good vibes. There's plants everywhere. The lighting is good. There's music on, and we are celebrating and celebrating with food, celebrating with all kinds of things through hardship. We also have community and collective gardening programs. So that's our grow. Actually, maybe we'll go through the slides because I have beautiful pictures for each of them. You can go to the next one. Yeah, I'll do this one first. I think it's really interesting when I said that we're looking at short-term and long-term, that we have sort of this visual way of looking at it. So you see our pillars of share, cook, grow. I'll get into it in more detail in a minute. And then we have mobilize around the outside, mobilize or advocate. So really thinking about what are the longer term solutions we can be addressing. I don't know if anyone listens to CBC in the morning, if anyone heard Debbie Field this morning on the current at 8:40 talking about the Coalition for Healthy School Food, and no, nobody was listening to CBC this morning. Anyway, she's one of my colleagues and we're really involved in that work, advocating for a universal healthy school food program across the country. I can talk about that more if anyone's interested. Okay, next slide. So this is an illustration of our community and collective gardening program. Community gardens we run them for the city in Côte-des-Neiges and DG. We run 5 community gardens. And those are the gardens that you see that we hear all the time have super long waiting lists. It's really hard to get into. And everybody gets a little plot of their own and they garden in their plot. And so we run those for the city. This is something really different. This is our collective gardening program. We run 6 collective gardens that over 30,000 square feet of cultivatable, I think a French word. Espace cultivable, growable space. And we have about 160 gardeners every year, and each one is in a specific, each group is in a specific garden, and they garden together, and they really build community. Beautiful things come out of these gardens that go far beyond the $500 of produce that the gardeners bring home with them over a season. Last year we had somebody who broke their ankle during the season pretty early on. And a lot of the people who use our programs are isolated, don't have big support networks. And all the other gardeners really came together and made sure that this person got the harvest and would drop them off at their house and check in on her and make sure she had her groceries and bring her food basket. And all of a sudden, not only did this person have access to this beautiful outdoor space, but they had a community. They had people who cared about them. And that's the kind of thing that we're doing in our gardens. Okay, next slide. So that's our grow stream that I just talked about. Then we have a cook stream. And in our this is good. In our cook stream, we have all kinds of programs, whether it's cultural cooking, where we have adults from all over the world who come in and lead workshops. We pay for people to lead workshops. Members of the community are also accessing our resources to lead workshops, cooking workshops and cultural workshops about their heritage, where their food comes from. And these are like often on the weekend, and they're like real happenings. 50 people will come and in our space, and they'll cook together and then eat together. There'll be music from the country, and maybe traditional dress will be shown. They're really wonderful. We have a really robust youth and after school program called Boîte à Lunch, or the lunchbox. And kids come in, kids who are identified by schools, and many of these workshops actually happen in schools. And so kids who are identified by their teachers as being in particular need come in, they make their lunch for the next day. And at the same time, they learn how food is marketed at them. Why they think that sugar cereals taste better than eating oatmeal with blueberries. They learn how to make a healthy plate. They even learn about the kind of language of good food versus bad food or healthy food. All the judgment that we put into food that can be connected to fat shaming and teasing kids. Like, how is all of this complexity around food broken down? And so they learn all of that at the same time as they're learning how to cut food and how to prepare food, and so that then their parents are more likely to include them in cooking and include them in the kitchen. And I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, but basically like 80% of the kids who go through this program are their parents report that they're more likely to taste foods that they'd never tasted before. So really, and then these programs are also gateways, because these kids sometimes who are in the schools who are identified by the teachers, the parents don't necessarily know about us or know about other services in their community. And so these programs are all different gateways to have access to the different types of services that we offer. So a kid gets through this program, all of a sudden their parents know about us, the kid brings the parent for a meal, maybe now they need a food basket. maybe now they're there on a Friday and we have another organization talking about tenant rights. And so they get to sit down with this organization. Now they realize that they can get better housing. And so building this whole community network where people's lives can improve and they have agency over their lives. Next slide. One of the programs that I didn't really admittedly understand that well, and I'm beginning to really think it's one of the programs I want to invest a lot in my time at the depot, is our Good Food Markets. These are pop-up markets in different neighborhoods in right now NDG, particularly in what are called food deserts. So food desert is where someone cannot walk easily from their house. It's within, depending on the definition, 500 meters to 1 kilometer in a radius vicinity that you can't walk to an affordable grocery store or get fresh produce. And so we put these pop-up markets in the Walkley area, the Benny area, and St. Raymond's area. And we bring in, they're 6 months a year, and we bring in affordable food, almost all local, almost all organic, and we sell it at subsidized prices so that members of those communities have access to food. And then right away, we're breaking down the stigma. It's not stigmatized, it's a market, you pay. It is subsidized though, so it still has a specific target audience. And then on top of it, we're able to participate in another program called Carte de Proximité, where we have a donor who buys us a whole bunch of these prepaid credit cards that are loaded monthly. And so then we give those to the families that are in those neighborhoods and are most in need. And those people are able to actually purchase food at these markets for free. And that represents about 20% of our sales at the markets. So that's an exciting program. And I'm working really hard right now with an NDG because the NDG Côte-des-Neiges Borough just adopted a new strategic plan for 2023 to 2030, where there are two of the pillars in their strategic plan. One is that all residents of the borough have access to healthy, nutritious food that as much as possible is grown locally. And the second one is that there are more green spaces in their neighborhoods. So we're an obvious partner for them. We have these kinds of programs and we can amplify them with the appropriate resources. So I'm working hard with the city because I think that this program is one. We have 3 markets right now, but we can have 10, and we could do them in social housing complexes and complexes where there's seniors who can't move. We can build all kinds of animation around them where, you know, I know my mom loves squash. She can't eat squash anymore because she can't cut it unless she comes to my house or unless I cut it for her. So what if we were there at the markets and there was someone who could cut the squash or cut the beets or prepare things in advance so that people who could start to eat the things that they want to eat with less effort and not buy prepackaged food that's from Mexico. Next slide. This is our food bank. And I don't know what you imagine when you think of a food bank, but certainly I would guess that it's not this. When we pivoted after COVID, it actually looks a little bit different now. We've rearranged things, but this gives you the right flavor of it. We have organized our food bank as a grocery store because part of our key values are dignity and respect and agency and reciprocity. So people come into the food bank, they might be in crisis, they might be brand new to Montreal, have arrived a week before from the Ukraine, they come into our space and they get to pick what they want. They're not being given craft dinner and noodles that they don't want to eat. They're being able to choose fresh fruits and vegetables, whole grains, food that they can cook with. And they pick, they have depot dollars, different allocations depending on the size of the family, and they pick what they want. So it's a pretty incredible model. The problem, I think I have some slides coming up. I'll get to it when I get to it. So it's a beautiful model, and just to give you a sense, well, the way we work is each family or individual who's shopping for the family is accompanied by a volunteer or sometimes a staff person. And we keep track of, we have like movable point of sale cash tablets. And so it really gives us a chance to connect with the people that are using the services and have more of an interaction with them and understand their needs. And I was working, one of my early shifts when I first started, and I was being open and I was trying to understand. So I was doing a lot of floor shifts. And there was a family that came in, and they were from Mexico City. They had just arrived, and they were trying to. Anyway, they were trying to shop. They were picking strange things, and I couldn't understand why they were picking such strange things, because it was a couple and a 5-month-old baby, and they were picking canned beans and sardines, and not that those are strange things, but I said, why aren't you taking the dried beans? Why aren't you taking rice? Like, why are you not taking any of the vegetables like eggplant or things that you could cook? And I just asked, without judgment, but I couldn't. There was something that didn't work, and they said, well, we don't have any pots and pans yet, so we can't cook any of that. And so the depot is an incredible place, and we have a donor who gives us $3,000 a year for emergency funds, and we buy gift cards to different places with that money. So with we call it the Lorne Emergency Fund. That's the person's first name. And so they were able to leave not only with their food basket, but with gift cards to go to Walmart and to the dollar store. So they could buy pots and pans and get some diapers and get some other things they need. And this family, in our value of reciprocity, ended up, the man became a volunteer in our kitchen. And then we have conversational language. They're not classes, they're just people sit around a table and eat food and speak either in French or English, but there's retired teachers who kind of animate this. So they started coming to our language classes, and it really became an anchor for them as they became settled in Montreal, because we're a community center and we're thinking about these long-term solutions. It's not just the Band-Aid, here, take your food basket, buy it. What are the other things you need right now? And how can we help you into the next stage of your life? Okay, next slide. I can talk about this for a long time, so at some point you might have to stop me. That's James, who was our manager, was our chef, and is now our food skills manager. And it's actually a pretty beautiful story. Lowen, who's on the left, is 17, maybe he's 18 now. And he just finished working. He did a 6-month articling on, I don't know, I can't do left and right. The Filipino kid. He came in and in a learning position, wanted to go to chef school, but he didn't really get it. At one point, we have a steam kettle, like a massive kettle, and it got blocked, and we found him, not me, but James found him with the toilet plunger trying to clean it. Right? Like, this is a kid who would have gotten fired in any job. Like, yeah, that's like a zero tolerance kind of a mistake. Himself in the kitchen and coordinate and run volunteers and then he got into chef school, and we bought him a chef knife as a gift on him, and now he comes by and he volunteers and he says hi sometimes, but he's going to chef school. He's going to be able to do his dream, and he might not have had that chance if he hadn't had the learning and the investment that we made in him, where he was able to give back also. And the other woman in the picture is a woman named Ikram, and it's another program that we have where we call it participant chefs. So as we get to know our participants, they come in, we get to know them, they eat meals at our space, 3 times a week maybe, as they're getting organized, they get their food baskets. And there's some of us, when I shop with people, as I was describing, some of them, different people, but some of them love to tell you about their recipes and exactly what they're going to make with the thing and how they're going to season it, and they're going to cut open the eggplant, and they're going to put in the cloves of garlic, and they're going to wrap it in tin foil, and then they're going to do this other thing. They get really as enthusiastic as I do about food. And so as we identify those people, we invite them to plan and prepare a meal alongside our chef, and we pay them for this. And also they get community recognition. And it is so meaningful to these women, so far mostly women, who come in and get to share their culture, share their food, be recognized by their community, have something to give back, because many people are coming here to Montreal from all over the world, and they have so much knowledge and so much expertise, and then come here and are not treated always with the respect and dignity that they deserve. So these small gestures that we make build so much confidence in people and then help them to move on to their next spaces and be part of a community. Okay, next slide. So we're a food bank, and you imagine again like slop. I don't know what you imagine when you think of a food bank. I imagine to this day Oliver Twist. Please, sir, can I have some more? From when I was in a play in high school, but I don't know if that's an image that means anything to you, but that image is really about the charity model. It's not quite enough to eat. It's slop, it's gray, it's unappealing. People are really hungry and so they eat it. And that's not the model we're using. We are making absolutely beautiful, delicious food, locally sourced as much as possible. Most of the food that's in our community meal program does come from Wasson Montréal. We get about $250,000 worth of food every year from Wasson Montréal, which needs to be transformed right away. We can't give it out in our food bank because it's not in good enough shape. It's ugly and it's mushy but we can transform it. And with a few other ingredients chosen with care, we can make each meal for between 25 cents and 50 cents additional in addition to the money that we get from Montréal, and make feasts for people that make them feel like they're being treated like family. We also have a social justice club. That's Huda, who runs our social justice club, where really the idea is people can come together and become agents of change. And maybe some of you saw in the summer, we were on the cover of the Gazette with our housing campaign, because as we know, we cannot only work on food insecurity in a silo. Food insecurity is, as I said at the beginning, an issue of income. And if people can't pay their rent, then it's all, I'm not being very articulate here, but it's all connected. And most of the people who come identify housing as one of their major issues. And so we have the Social Justice Club, and now they're working a lot on housing. We met with our city councilors a few weeks ago. We're meeting with our NNAs. And so this group of people who have lived experience of poverty, lived experience of housing insecurity, are really getting to have the backing of the depot behind them and learning new skills on how to advocate and make changes in their community around issues that matter to them. So all of that is that we have all these programs that increase access. You can keep going. And I'm going to this last in a way, because it's often what's talked about first. I mean, maybe you've heard me talking on CBC. I'm pretty often on the radio. And the questions I get asked are about emergency food. And the truth is that it's a big part of what we do. Our emergency food program represents about half of our $3 million budget, but it's only one piece of the puzzle. So we served last year almost 10,000 food baskets to over 2,000 families in NDG and Great St. Area. And I think this year we're expecting that maybe to double, because you can see on the graph that well, it just keeps going up. So that's since January, I believe I put since January.
Yeah.
Since January of last year. And it's just gone up and up and up and up, particularly starting in the spring. If you go to the next slide. And that's the number of new families accessing our services who've never accessed our services before. So again, you can see that starting in we were having about 50 new families for many months accessing our services. And then all of a sudden it jumped to 100, 150 new families. So there is a huge need, and in the cost of inflation, in the context of inflation, we are seeing more and more people who are accessing our services who have employment income, who have never had to access our services before, but it's also affecting us because we obviously are also buying food, and although we have really good purchasing power, the cost of food has risen for us as well as we're trying to meet this need. I haven't given this presentation with this slideshow before, so maybe we'll keep moving. I think maybe one of the things that is an anchor of everything we do is our healthy food policy. And I think it's come through in what I've said, but you know, we believe that everybody should have access, not just to food, but to healthy, good quality food that's culturally appropriate. And we have a healthy food policy that really speaks to that and permeates every single one of our programs so that we're serving really good quality food. And it's also, next slide, it's also connected into our advocacy because we're trying to build local food systems as much as possible. We have these amazing, you can go to the next slide. We have these amazing relationships with over 20 different, that's not true, 20 different programs, not 20 different partnerships, 11 different farmers and local producers, and we're trying to buy them as much as possible. This has been something that's been going on for a long time, but last budget exercise, we agreed that we would put a line item into our budget for actually buying organic and local food. So about 30% of our food budget goes to buying local organic food. And that doesn't mean that we're spending, I mean, it is more expensive in many cases, but not always, because these farmers who maybe are getting started or who we become a very important client for them and they can rely on us to build their businesses. And then that also means that when they have a surplus, they think of us. And so it becomes another place where there's reciprocity. So that's, I think, what I've got for you today. I think I was more or less within my time. Right. So thank you. And I believe you have, there was going to be time for questions. So
for the questions.
Susan, yes, we do actually. If you can have, Susan sent you one?
Yeah.
Okay. So just to make sure that everybody can hear, if you can repeat any questions that people ask.
Jim, are you moderating the questions? Because I see.
Rod has a question.
Let's start with Rod.
What an incredible presentation. Yes. One tends to think of the food bank as a dingy basement, probably in a church hall.
You know what? We're going to do something differently. I'm going to ask you to come up to the mic because otherwise people who are online can't hear. Yeah.
Stay there, Rod. It's okay. We got a long rope here.
You're saying what an incredible presentation. One tends to think of food banks as rather dingy quarters in the basement of a church hall, handing out packaged food of MACD or whatever, are not very healthy. And here you are doing so many different things within, I guess you could, well, thank goodness you call it a depot rather than a food bank, but your programs are incredible and the way you bring in the whole of the community in that, very worthwhile. Thank you for your presentation.
Yeah.
My guess is it's going to be easiest if you come up here.
Most like an expert.
Because I don't remember your name.
Deborah.
Deborah has a question.
Thank you so much. You deserve a round of applause and standing ovation. It's just, it's a comment, not a question. I have a young niece who's children and teaching them about food and cooking would be a wonderful thing for after school and for children who do not understand about food, and to teach them how to cook and understand food. So I think it's a wonderful idea for children to learn at an early age about food. And so congratulations. I think that's a wonderful thing. And I'm going to suggest it to my sister in her neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. Maybe just to respond to that, our program for youth what that lunch targets grade 4 and 5 kids eat. And what we're really trying to do is ramp it up and also offer it to high school students. We have it in some, we have some high school, we have about 2 sessions per year for high school kids, but the demand is growing and our desire to provide those programs is also growing.
Just to say, my little niece, she's only 6 years old, and she has a problem, an eating disorder.
I'm sorry.
It starts early.
I have an eating disorder also, but it's the opposite.
Right.
Question from Susan Buscemi. One of our club's areas of focus is the environment. And we sometimes see posts online asking the public to bring clean, undamaged plastic food containers and egg cartons to the depot for use in your meal distribution efforts. Do you welcome these containers? And the second part of that would be, and why do you not take food donations?
We go through stages in the year where we need the egg cartons and the yogurt containers. I think right now, at this particular moment, we have lots of egg cartons, but we do need the clean yogurt containers. We use the yogurt containers mostly for the What That Lunch, for the after school program, to do packaging and stuff, because we are also conscious of the environment. I think the other piece around environment, and I know this wasn't part of the question, but I can't help myself, is our community gardens. Because a lot of the community gardens are in the urban jungle. We call them heat islands, des îlots de chaleur, and having green spaces within concrete dense environments is really, really important, and also an incredible learning space for youth and for adults. And we have all kinds of stats that show when we survey our gardeners that they are much more likely after gardening to make decisions that take sustainability into account. In terms of why we don't take food donations anymore, again, I invite you to our space. Prior to the pandemic, in our space, we had a basement area that's quite large and was used exclusively for food storage. And we would put tremendous efforts into labor intensive for us, and then we would end up with all this food that we would have to sort. And I find it hard to believe that I've been involved in sorting in other organizations as a volunteer, and people don't always give what they themselves would eat or use. They give expired food, they give open packages, they give things that we have to throw away. And so the amount of volunteer hours in the storage space that it took for us to deal with the donated food became unworth it. In addition, we are able to provide much higher quality food and much more consistency to our participants when we buy food. And because we were able to avoid all that storage space, we now we're able to convert that storage space into a workshop kitchen where we have workshops for youth, for seniors, for cultural members of different cultural communities, for dads. And so we were able to use our space in a much more productive way. And I guess the last thing I'll say is that for every dollar that you would spend in the grocery store to buy your canned goods or what you might donate, we have $3 of purchasing power. So your donation goes a lot further. I have more art points too. Maybe the last thing is that a food bank or the food programs we run don't run on the food alone. There's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears that go into them. And about a third of our workforce is comprised of volunteers, but the other 2/3 are people who are professionals and who are working really hard, putting a lot of thought into this work and coordinating the delivery. And so donations help us buy the food, but they also help us pay for all of that staff and our space and to keep the lights on. And so all of that funding is really important as well.
Yeah, for donated food, I was thinking like this, from restaurants.
We serve about, so the question is about donated food and if there could be, if we would be able to accommodate leftovers from banquets or restaurants or events. And we can't, but there are organizations that do. But we are serving, based on our healthy food policy, about 200 meals a day. And so, we have a full-time chef who is making beautiful food, as I described. And it's too much logistics for us to take that. And then there's all kinds of sanitation questions. We're inspected by, what's it called, MTech, MAPAC, several times a year. So has that food been properly stored before it gets to us? How do we store it? So there's a lot of questions in terms of the size of our operation to not be able to take that.
Thank you.
But if you want to know where we can bring it, then
Yes.
we can talk about that after.
My last question, I think, is you mentioned some of the groups that you're associated with, like the Moisson Montréal and that kind of thing. I'm just thinking like we've done work for O3, which is not very far from you. What other kind of groups are you connected with in NDG coordination?
So we work in partnership with a lot of different organizations, and in our planning this year, one of the things that we've identified as a goal is to be a super connector organization. That's important to us because, again, we know that most of the people that we're working with, their problems cannot be addressed by any one organization alone, because their issues aren't siloed. So we're working very closely. Well, we work with Moisson Montréal because they're one of our donors, as is Centraide. We work with O3, we work with Women on the Rise, we work with Bienvenue NDG, we work with the NDG Community Council, we work with the Eva Marsden Center for Aging, used to be called the NDG Community Seniors Council, but I think it's now the Eva Marsden Center for Social Justice and Aging. And we do seniors programming with them. So we work with most of the organizations in NDG. With the different, we have a snack program, and after, this is such a beautiful program, if you will indulge me, but we work with 7 community centers in NDG, Walkley, St. Raymond's, all the smaller community centers and the Y, there's 7 of them, and we started a snack program with them because it was an identified need. The animators of these after school programs were saying, kids are showing up hungry, we can't really help them with their homework, we can't play basketball with them, they're hungry, and can you help us? And so we said, yeah. And we started something that was, we get yogurts and cheese sticks and things like that from Moisson Montréal, and we would bring it to the centers once a week. And then we have this incredible coordinator who's also a nutritionist, Nat, and she's like, we can do better than this. And so she's created this thing called the Interactive Snack Program. And so once a week, she sends a big box to these different community organizations, broccoli, apples, bags of carrots, celery, these amazing dips that we make. And she's taught the animators and the kids how to turn that into delicious snacks. And so they're getting food literacy, they're getting better quality snacks, they're getting snacks that last longer. We had cut up all the broccoli, it gets a little dry and gross, but now they're cutting it the day that they need it, as opposed to for the whole week cut in advance. So it's this interactive snack program. So all of those community centers, and then we're also working with Multicaf, which some of you might know, in Côte-des-Neiges. With the Y, we're in touch with them. I mean, we're working with Share the Warmth. Our Boîte à Lunch program, actually, we've exported it. So we work with 6 other organizations in other parts of Montreal, in Saint-Michel, in the Plateau, in Côte-des-Neiges. And we're actually acting as a funder because we got a big grant from the Department of Public Health, and we're actually funding all of these organizations to run that after school program and teaching them how to do it with the curriculum that we've developed. So we are working with many organizations. I talked about the Coalition for Healthy School Foods. I'm on the steering committee of that with 5 or 6 other food organizations. So we're quite well networked.
How many employees and volunteers?
We have, so the question was about our team. How big is our team, both in terms of volunteers and staff? We're 27 full-time staff. And then we have at any given time about 50 to 60 people on our payroll. So that includes all the animators who are animating all these different workshops that I was telling you about, seasonal employees, people who come in for part-time contracts. And then at any given week, we have 150 volunteers doing 3-hour, 3.5-hour shifts. And I don't know exactly how many hours that is off the top of our head. And we have in our volunteer pool, we have 247 active volunteers.
Now I get to talk about you.
I'll sit down.
Everything you never knew about the depot, or what we used to call the NDG Food Depot. That's a thing of the past. It's a completely revitalized organization. I didn't know 3/4 of what you told us about today.
Did COVID help the changes? Like,
In terms of moving from a food bank to a grocery store model, yes.
yes.
All the other programs did so far.
We were just talking about how COVID has changed the outlook a little bit, and that they have a grocery store now that they didn't have before, but the transformation of the depot was already underway at that time. Not only did we learn a lot today, and I know that for us it was worth the wait. I know that you had to wait a little bit longer to take center stage. Just so you do know, I counted at least 3 or 4 people on Zoom, call it 6. So bigger group than we, whatever, yeah, 6.
That's like my left and
You know,
right.
and I think it puts in light something that A, that we took for granted, B, we hadn't heard a lot about in a while directly, and C, it's something now that is community-wide program. And you're talking to us at a time when we are talking about how to focus the efforts of our club. So the whole thing kind of dovetails very, very well. And you've given us lots to think about and talk about. So I thank you very, very much for that.
Pleasure. Thank you for the opportunity.
That said,